Hi, and welcome to an episode of the JetRails podcast. I'm Robert, your host, and today we're going to be talking about MageChat and how the Magento community is getting together and communicating in new places and evolution that's been happening. Uh, you know, uh, Certainly a lot of vibrant conversations happening online. And with that in mind, I've got Kalen Jordan with us today. Um, you know, Kalen, before we dive in on MageChat, would you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yeah, sure. So I've been in the Magento community for I want to say 10-ish years, something like that. Got in as a developer and then I did development for a number of years and was doing some open source. And then I built my first kind of business. My first kind of product business, which was an email marketing software. And then I had a little acquisition of that a few years later. Uh,
So that was Mage Mail back in the
Mage
day.
Mail. Yep, back in the day. And then I did what did I do? And then I did commerce. And then started the podcast, Mage Talk podcast, or 7 or so years ago as well. And then did that with Philip Jackson for a number of years. And then
So mainly,
uh,
I'm going to point out you just like coming up with businesses that you can put Mage in front of. That
yeah, that's that's
it's been
kind
good
of
to
the
you.
thing, man. It's been good. It's worked. The ain't broke, don't fix it. There was kind of that trend in the Magento community, and then people started diversifying away. So, like when I did Commerce Hero, um, I purposefully went away from the Mage thing and into the commerce thing. And actually the Slack Mage Chat I started actually 7 years ago as a just a free Slack, and so that was hence the Mage naming there. And so when I recently turned it into a paid thing and built kind of a business model around it, I was thinking about maybe rebranding it, but I said, you know what, I'm going to just stick with that name kind of a little bit for nostalgia purposes, even though we are broadening out beyond some Magento stuff in there as well. Although the core of it is very Magento centric. But I just thought, let's just stick with the name. It's there, and I kind of like the nostalgia of it. So
About and around when did you first start that Slack group?
it was like 7 years ago. I had lost track, and I looked it up recently, and it was like 7 years ago. And it was just I said, hey, I think this is around the time Slack was starting to get more popular. And I said, hey, let me just create this free thing, and then I just would start inviting people in, and got up to 500, 600 members or so. And yeah, it was just a place to kind of chat with people I'd met at conferences, people I knew online, and things like that.
Yeah,
Um, and
interesting. No,
yeah,
and now it's. Would you say it's your primary focus at the moment?
yeah, big time. Yeah. So what happened is that a few months, I guess 2 months ago now. And so Commerce Hero I've been doing for like 6 years, and the last like three or so. So Commerce Hero started out as a hiring platform. Initially, it was going to be like an Upwork for Magento, and then it kind of pivoted more into the full time hiring slash recruiting side of things. I went to the dark side, but I. But I, there was a lot of weird gray areas in recruiting, and I feel like I was comfortable with all the decisions I made. I think you know a lot of us know recruiters that we may not have great opinions of, and I struggle. And I so anyways, I feel good about it, but at the same time, I'm happy. So I woke up one day and I said, I got to do something else, and I just decided to ramp it down. So I still have some contracts that are paying out and stuff like that, and paying the bills as I ramp up MageChat. But I basically woke up 2 months ago and I said, I got to do something else. Because for the past 3 years or so, I was just going through the motions, and my heart wasn't really in it, kind of a deal. And so yeah, so once I decided to do that, I was trying to figure out what to do next. And this paid community thing is something I had been kicking around for a while, but I never had a real good excuse to really focus on it. So I started doing that, and now I'm just 150% all day, every day, focused on it, and so it's been kind of fun.
I want to dig in on that a little bit because I'll see 7 years later, there are Slack groups for the Magento Association, Magento
Yeah,
Community Engineering, or I think it's been renamed Magento Open Source.
yeah,
There's an active Slack group for Hoover. There are lots of different places that people in the community can converge in Slack.
yeah,
What gave you that drive? As I mean, obviously you're
yeah.
a serial entrepreneur. So had this gut feeling that now was the time to really unleash this, and for what it's worth, to invite people like me in finally.
So I have to say, part of the reason I never added you sooner, I can't remember when we first met in New York, but it was probably uh, 18, 19, I don't know. But what happened with the Slack is I started 7 years ago. I was real active with it for several years, and it was real active. And then what happened is I kind of ghosted on it for like 3 years. I wasn't even approving new invite requests. I wasn't reading anything. I was kind of just unplugged. And really the last, I don't know, whatever it is, 2, 3 years, like I said, I was not, my heart wasn't totally in Karma's here. I was going through the motions. I was pulling back from a lot of community stuff in general, events. COVID happened, but this was before. I can't really blame this on COVID, but this was before COVID, and so that's one of the reasons I probably would have added you a lot sooner, but I wasn't actively really moderating it at that for the
It was
last
dormant.
chunk of
Yeah.
years. Yeah, it was dormant, and this ties into your other question, which is I really thought this Slack was going to completely die because there's so many different Slacks. I was not managing it whatsoever. One of the guys that had been pretty active in there created a Discord, as the Slack was sort of dissipating. Created a Discord and was managing that more actively. And Discord has been picking up steam. Discord has some pretty cool features. Namely, you get the full text search right out of the box, which is the big thing you don't get with Slack. So, anyways, then what happened is my friend Peter Yop had pinged me and he said, "Hey, I want to invite some people." And I said, "You know what? I'm going to just make you the admin of this." This was before I decided to build a business model. This was 4 5 months ago, and then I did that, and then he pinged me and he goes, "Hey, maybe we should make this paid so we can get the search history feature." And so that was one data point. And I think that was before I decided to close down Commerce Hero. And so then, as I started looking at it, I went, all right, let me go ahead and do this. And so then, but the thing that was surprising to me was that there was this group of, I don't know, maybe 30, maybe like active contributors, like 10 or 15. And then there's been some sleepers that are in the Slack, but they mostly read stuff. So anywhere from, I don't know, 10 to 60, 70 that had stuck around in the Slack. And that was really surprising to me. Um, and so I think that what was there is that because of the way I kind of curated the group, because it wasn't open to the whole floodgates, there was this, group of people that enjoyed, staying connected with each other. And sorry, I'm monologuing so much.
No,
Feel
it's
free to
interesting.
jump in. But so basically, I think the differentiation is that it's something that is smaller. So it's private. I think a lot of your Slacks are more anybody can join them, and of course, there's downsides to that, right? There's upsides to being able to have a wide tent that everybody can join, and I am talking with some people about some of the uh, tensions around inclusivity and stuff I'm trying to work through. But I think the benefit is that because it's a smaller group of people that are a bit more senior in the ecosystem and that they can really solve kind of higher level problems with each other, whether it's technical stuff. Traditionally, it was mostly Magento developers, but I'm broadening out to more businessy type stuff. There's solutions architects channels. I create a channel that's only for merchant side people, so they can just and they can talk without being pitched constantly by agencies and vendors. So there's that. There's lots. There's an agency owners channel, which somebody had just suggested, and I went, okay, cool. I created the channel, and there's like 25 people, and then there's some really cool conversation has been happening in there, and then we did a meeting, a video meeting. We're probably going to do those regularly, and people have been sharing really transparently about how they're operating their businesses, profit margins, how they structure teams, how they hire. So it's just been organically kind of developing as I'm just obsessively spending all day on it and kind of listening to what people are looking for and trying to kind of adjust. So I don't know if that answers the
I think it
question.
does. Well, look,
Yeah.
so when after you and I had chatted and you spun up a partnership channel in there, and I hope to see more partnership friends collaborating there. That my personal perspective has been that the Magento community hasn't had quite the same space to connect and collaborate and communicate. That
Yeah.
a lot of things have been out there, but a lot of them, kind of like the way that you described this, that they became more dormant or less
Yeah.
active. That didn't mean
Yeah.
that there wasn't a need, but
Yeah.
the Magento community forums aren't very active anymore.
Yeah.
But there's still all of these, just the same way that we saw at Meet Magento New York, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of great, members of the community that wanted to connect and come together with
Right.
purpose and collaborate. And so having more of that day-to-day place to do it,
Yeah.
I can see how that could be valuable. I think starting from the developers and those that are really immersed in the platform itself, you know, day in and day out, that's a really central place to be. But I've been seeing communications happening that I haven't been seeing elsewhere. And, uh,
Yeah. And
that's the interesting thing.
I've heard that as well. I think there's some valuable conversations happening, technical and otherwise. A couple of people told me that with the security patch thing that happened recently, they first, and I didn't even quite realize this until after the fact. Like I sort of saw the conversations happening, but I assumed they were happening elsewhere. But a couple people told me that they went right to MageChat and they were able to find some real specific information that they didn't find elsewhere on the patches. I thought that was super cool. And Yeah, I'm sort of gonna
Uh,
throw everything at the wall and see what sticks phase. Like the partnership thing sounded cool. I want to try to figure out how to build out more traction in that channel. And each of these different channels is like a separate project for me. I kind of try to figure out how to build activity and engagement and traction. And then I also started like through the website, I started different things like I threw together this idea of a partner program, where there's vendors like hosting providers or extension vendors, and one of the common threads I heard was that like existing Slack users would sort of provide sort of higher touch, higher level support to some of the agency contacts or particular customers that they really want to have closer relationships with. And so, you want most of your stuff to go through a standard support ticketing flow, but maybe, for a tech lead at an agency, you want to have a little bit of a direct line. And a lot of companies already have ways to handle this, but that ended up being one of the benefits that I tried to work on kind of formalizing as a way to create some value there. Oh, Amnesty. I have to say, man, I have to say that the Amnesty thing, you had done the JetRails Amnesty thing. Willem had done the integrations with Amnesty. And a lot of people have a lot of critiques around Amnesty. I see that a lot. And I said, hey, man, instead of just, you know, people ranting endlessly and seeing the kind of lead you guys had taken in building some bridges there, I reached out. I talked to the CEO, Sergey. I said, I think he understands a lot of the negative sentiment that exists and is open to really addressing it. So I said, cool, why don't you come in? He came in and he was getting left and right, man, people throwing different issues at him with extension issues. And he was addressing them really effectively, I felt, and getting to the root cause of some support policy issues, and one particular agency owner who was super unhappy with the support experience got to where he was happy about the situation. And Sergey's gotten into some details. They have 200 extensions. They have different quality metrics across different ones, and they're making a lot of improvements. A lot of the horror stories of the past are things that have already been addressed and have already been improved, performance wise, otherwise. And so that was a cool thing for me to see, that I feel like it's beneficial to the ecosystem as a whole, to Amnesty, and also to people who need to use Amnesty extensions, want to use Amnesty extensions for whatever reason. It was like I feel like there was a little bit of a bridge building there. And I want to just sort of, and then Headworks joined as well. There hasn't really been a lot of um, activity around Headworks extensions, but Alex popped in Galzo, which was neat to see. And so,
Sure.
anyways, I'm trying to,
Yeah, no, there's a lot there. I mean, look, the latest Magento security patches, when Adobe released patches for, the latest versions of 2.4.4 and 2.4.5, and left people in the dark on what earlier versions of Magento were also susceptible, and, didn't promise patches for those initially, and so on and so forth, that there was a lot going on in the community to figure out how to address all that. And of course, there was pressure, and things got addressed by Adobe,
yeah,
and there's a lot that I could unpack there. But seeing people be able to communicate as a group within MageChat and share information about what they were seeing, and community patches and other things happening, I thought was
yeah,
particularly effective. But the same way that people coming together and being able to say, look, that they don't work with Amnesty because years ago something happened, and
yep,
things did happen.
yep,
But when you and I had chatted after seeing some of that, I was like, but they have a CEO who's been there a few years, and who wasn't part of any of that, and
yep,
they've strategically continued to evolve as a company, and that, like, yeah, over 200 extensions. I cannot swear that you're not going to find a bug somewhere or a challenge
right,
somewhere.
right,
That's kind of the nature of the business. But if you're in it to, to have a healthy relationship, and to see things work well, I know a ton of merchants, and
yeah,
that are using one Amnesty extension or another, and you'd much rather see things go well, and see feedback go where it needs to go, and
yeah,
seeing people come into Mage Chat like that, and jump into the fray, and
yeah. And
participate. It's
what I
great.
really love is the ability to have, and this is one of the things that's challenging about public social media, is that people can just chime in, and the conversation can get real nasty or ugly or whatever. And in a context that's sort of more private and moderated, where, like, I remember when the amnesty thing came up in the Slack, and I remember tagging you on a conversation, and I was just leaving to go out the door, and I remember being worried that it was going to come across as overly negative or critical, and then seeing how you responded really shifted my thinking on the situation. You brought up some good points. And what I
I've
really,
enjoyed working with their team in recent
yeah,
years, and that doesn't take away from somebody's pain points. And where I was talking with someone, at Meet Magento New York, who saw that we had a case study, with Amnesty at our table, and immediately brought up a story that he had. But then
yeah,
when he heard how things had evolved, that it turned into a really, really great conversation.
yeah,
And I think that's part of what sometimes needs to happen, is that, we all get stuck informationally, in some kind of a silo of,
a
okay,
hundred percent. Yeah,
that's all that we know. And
yep,
that, will a lot of the time, if a company continues to persevere for years and years, and continues to have, some volume and things happening, there is often a reason for it, and it doesn't mean that they don't misstep somewhere, that there aren't challenges, or that they're
yeah.
perfect. But I think that's a big part of it. So, looking forward, because I think we've tackled a little bit of what got us to this point and what's going on today. What's your roadmap look like? What are you hoping to achieve in, I'll say, 2023 with Mage Chat?
I'm up to like 110 paid seats. So I'm roughly half of the way there to where I can say, okay, this is kind of minimally viable for myself to pay the bills and stuff like that. So that's the main thing I'm trying to get towards with the next stages. I think that um, I'm not a gigantic planner, I will say. So I don't have real specific plans for 2023. I think that what I tend to do is kind of respond to the feedback I get from people, and I kind of have a way of just kind of a gut feel of like listening. Sometimes it's tricky to know who to listen to, right? Like some people, even going back to the Amnesty thing, right? Like some people, I'm never going to use Amnesty. I don't want to hear about that. And you have to hear that and go like, okay, well, what about this? What do I listen to over here? And so there's been lots of different stuff I've been doing. Actually, I created somebody mentioned they're interested in trying to get their business acquired. They were an agency owner out in Europe. And I said, okay, cool. And that's something I've heard in the past over the years. And every once in a while, I'll do a social media post. Nothing's ever really ever come of it. I said, you know what? I'm going to just make a page on the site where people can, if they want to acquire something or if they want to, be listed as an investor. So I threw that up on the site, and I was able to get them a couple of intros. And then on the jobs side of things, I also, which is what Commerce Hero was about. I rolled a jobs. There was a jobs channel in the Slack forever, but I rolled that into the website where you can post a job, or you can post yourself as a candidate. You can do it anonymous if you want to, or public. So it's funny because I've been taking a lot of the original Commerce Hero stuff and rolling it under MageChat, but without the percentage fees like for Commerce Hero, which was the business model there is like
It's
you're
just
paying
community
12%.
resource. It's you want to be
Yeah,
part of the community and come and everybody get what they need. No, I appreciate that, and that's. I mean, look, the last few years, especially as there were fewer trade shows and other things, I found myself making more one-to-one introductions between people than I ever before, and it helps people. That they want to get connected, they want to find that opportunity to work together, and depending on whether somebody's hiring or looking, whether somebody's looking for a partner that does something, whether there's always some need out there uh, that you know, as I'm out there talking to people, throughout the day, the week, the month, um, that I can often make those pairings. And I find that, but
yeah,
being able to have a board where you can just come and see on a wider level from a wider, you know, swath of the community, it's great.
right.
Um, now,
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly. I really enjoy making intros, and that was that funny is that's what got me into Commerce Hero initially was that I'd made a couple introductions organically, and I went, I kind of like this. This is kind of my thing, and so I built a business model around it, and that was great. But the constraint there is that you have to get the client or whoever to agree to pay that fee in order to make the intro. So then if I might have thought like, oh, these people feel like they would be good for them to know each other. I can't just make the intro. I got to go, well, how do you feel about this pricing model? And then sometimes yes, sometimes no. And now it feels so good because I can just make these intros without having to think about, without having that extra piece in there. And so it just feels like I'm able to contribute more overall value to the community and the ecosystem. And I really enjoy that. I enjoy making connections and stuff. So it's kind of neat that it's enabling me to focus on that more.
Yeah,
Um,
I can appreciate that. I enjoy partnerships, so it's a labor of love.
you're g-
Uh,
you I've said this before, man. You're very good at it. Like I remember like we were talking about how you've been doing this now for several years at JetRail, the podcast, the partnership stuff. and I think that you're doing an incredible job with it. And watching from a bit of a distance, and we've been in touch more closely recently, which has been fun. But yeah, man, you're doing a really good job. It's pretty impressive. A lot of hosting companies have gotten acquired, and acquisitions can be complicated. So um, I think that I didn't necessarily like. I think that seeing your trajectory over the last few years, I've been pretty impressed by where you're at now, and I think you've been a big part of that.
I sincerely appreciate that. Some days, like anybody else, just like that you put your head into it, and every now and then you've got to pop your head up and see what's going on. But perseverance, that for us, and I, not going to get into the entire hosting landscape, but that could be a whole other episode, right? But uh, the market has shifted. That Magento has gone farther up market from the old Magento 1 days. Like you say, there have been acquisitions, there have been things happening, and it's really trying to keep up with the market. And there's still a really strong core in the Magento ecosystem, and being able to make sure
Yeah.
that that people know that, hey, whether it's with us or somebody else I could introduce, that people want to continue to work together, and they want to solve problems, and they want to support merchants, and they want to work well together. And I said to someone recently, that for me, one of the core challenges in the Magento ecosystem at large is that if a merchant can't get what they need in a reasonable fashion, like, things can go wrong, right? But if you can't get past that, then they become an attrition statistic, because they love the platform, and they love the manifest destiny and the capabilities, and all the features, and all the great things about it. But it's a more technical lift, and so either you've got the right people standing side by side with you to make that happen, the right developers, the right hosts, etc.,
Mhm.
or it's painful. And so from where I sit, it's really just about making sure that people are paired up with the right providers. And that's, I'd love to say it's going to be JetRails 100% of the time. I'll just go with 99%, and I'll be, but
Cover your
and
bases.
I think the same for a lot of cases, that we see people outgrow a dev resource, or go through other growing pains. Lots of things happen in the market. But, before we wrap it up completely, I do have to ask you to tell people how they can get involved, because we've been talking about MageChat. And,
Yes.
what should their next steps be if they want to check it out and see if it's for them?
Yeah, I appreciate that. So the website is magechat.club, and you can go there and check it out, and you can subscribe there. Yeah, and then that's the basic process. There's kind of a vetting process. I just kind of want to so I'll review who you are, and make sure I basically just want to avoid if somebody is real salesy and they want to come in there and just pitch their stuff left and right. Obviously that would kind of kill the vibe. So it's just those types of things I want to prevent from seeping in, to just kind of maintain a culture of where people are, it's just a group of smart people that that are working to solve problems in this space, and that are interested in learning and contributing and stuff, but not, what I mean, like not being overly aggressive selling or pitching or that
So I
kind of a thing.
shouldn't
So
have been
that's
messaging all the members, and
yeah.
yeah, no, I got, all right.
Yeah,
Well, I'll
no,
have to.
that
No, honestly,
that was
I don't. To my memory, I've been in there a few months now, and sometimes a little more passively, but I don't think that I've gotten that kind of like sales outreach. I have been able to
good.
connect with some great people, but it's been in a much more targeted way, because of something that was coming up inside or outside of Mage Chat. And that's where, like when you said to me, Robert, in terms of JetRails, like, can we say that like people in Mage Chat are going to get some kind of additional, escalation or resource or something, it's like, well, if there are people in there that want to communicate, I want to be communicating with them. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, our support is, I mean, we're a web host. It's 24/7, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Yeah.
That I don't expect them to need me on a day-to-day basis. And if they're partners of JetRails and what have you, they
Totally.
probably have some Slack accounts with us or other things going on. Eh, but at the same time, there's a lot of people that are dealing with a lot of other things, and that
Yeah.
um, that we haven't gotten to that point with, and we want them to know that we're accessible
Yeah.
to them.
And I'm so glad you brought that up because pre-sales and support sometimes go hand in hand, and where exactly the line is between those is not always clear. And I think of it a lot like a conference. Like you go to a conference, right? You're going to see some people. Maybe they're customers, right? You are going to get sometimes somebody is going to ask you about a support issue at a conference, right? And maybe
Absolutely.
it's a and ideally it's a productive conversation, right? Because you go like, oh yeah, here's how we could do that, or here whatever. And obviously if you had 10 people in a row asking you about something that they could have put a support ticket through, you're going to go, this is not a productive use of my time at a conference. But there's that interplay between, here's an existing customer, here's a question maybe they have, here's some feedback maybe on the support process, and at the same time, here's somebody who's not a customer yet who has a question for us. And so by answering that question or whatever, you could say, well, this is extra support burden, but you could also say, this is partnership building, it's relationship building, it's strengthening. Or maybe you have an existing agency customer that's already a customer, but they go, oh, by the way, here's this other merchant I'd like to bring over to you, and I have question X, Y, and Z. So to me, the value there is that interplay, that combination of maybe some support that makes sense for that channel, as well as relationship building and stuff like that. So I think this is the first I've heard that you told me that you had some productive interactions with people on the
Well, I
kind of
don't want you to
partnership
think it's
front.
working. I want you to keep working at this, right? I don't want this to go on autopilot. But no,
you want
I think
you
even
want me
if
to
they've
keep
been
reading that?
brief, even if
Yeah,
it's just been like a validation of something,
yeah,
it's been a good place to connect. And look, you know, just like other mediums for me. So Meet Magento New York, I had people coming up to me and actually, having conversations that have impacted our product, that have impacted how we work with some of those partners. And there were a couple of those, right? But where somebody told us something about their experience with JetRails that we hadn't heard from them before. And we were like, well, we can solve for that. Like that's,
yep,
that's the opposite of insurmountable, right?
yep,
We only know what people tell us. And you
yep,
assume that if one person is saying it, how many more feel the same way, whether they're voicing it or not?
yeah,
And so
yeah,
you find those things like, oh, could we make this little change in this operation or within the product here? Or, a lot of our product improvement comes from feedback from our partners because
yep,
they're often the most vocal because they're using our tools in mass, right? So they see things happening at a scale, and it's like, well, why this or why that? I mean, a while back we released our command line tool, JetRails CTL, where you could do things that you might have had to open a ticket for in the past.
oh,
And
that's cool.
for the devs, it's lovely. And we've
Yeah,
gotten tremendous feedback, and we continue to add more to that as we see. Well, there are things that people do want to go. We're fully managed that they want to come to us for, but there are things that they want to be able to do on the fly. And getting that kind of feedback from people, it's tremendous. So no, I love seeing people come together and all that. Well, Kalen, this was a lot of fun to dive in and hear what you're up to.
thanks, man. I
Sounds like it's
appreciate
going to
it.
be an interesting ride in the coming months as you continue to build up steam. But I can say that from the conversations happening there, you've got some really active members in there. So, if anybody wants to just check it out for themselves, don't take my word for it. I think that anyone would agree. I do hang out and or at least check in on some of the other Magento Slack groups from time to time, and this is definitely one of the most active that I've ever seen, bar none, at any
Nice.
time.
That
So
makes me
the
super.
people in there like being there. That's for sure. That they've found a community.
I appreciate that, man. I think that the that's the other component of it too that I don't necessarily articulate, but I think you feel it when you're in there. Is that we like to have some fun and make it a place where you can kind of be yourself a little bit. You don't necessarily have to dot all your T's and dot all your I's and cross all your T's with everything you say, like you would in a public context. And I think we try to have some fun in there. The other thing I should have mentioned when you're asking about kind of plans for the future is, I'm basically like 2 months in on this, and the main goal is for activity and engagement to just increase while keeping the same, while things not getting like overly noisy, kind of keeping that signal to noise ratio is the goal. So the fact that you're already seeing some good activity levels relative to other Slacks and stuff is fantastic, and I basically want that to just increase in the next, probably 3 to 4 to 5 months. And then I don't, if I cap out at 200-300 members, yeah, that'll be cool. I don't necessarily want this to be a billion people because it'll get harder and harder to moderate that. So that's anyway. It occurred to me I should have said that in response to your
No,
past
I'm going to hold
question,
it
but
against you for the rest of our natural lives. That's all. No. uh, well, Kellen, thank you so much for coming on and talking about
thanks,
your
man.
journey here. Absolutely a pleasure having you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
All right. To our viewers and listeners, as always, thanks for tuning in. We'll have more great content like this for you soon.